The Kremlin has made a series of dramatic announcements in response to its failing special military operation in Ukraine. Russia says it will hold referendum votes in occupied Ukrainian territory to officially recognize the areas as Russian.
Firstly, this idea that there'll be these referendums in parts of Ukraine occupied by the Russians right now, so effectively the east and the south in simple terms. I mean, that is effectively the Russians trying to legitimize their presence there, but I think also it really ups the risk of escalation because these will not be free and fair votes. The conclusion of these referenda is foregone. Russia will basically ensure that these are votes legitimizing its presence in its eyes here in Ukraine.
President Putin has announced a partial military mobilization to help fight the war in Ukraine. In a television address, President Putin said the West wanted the end of Russia just as it had brought the Soviet Union to an end. It comes a day after Russian-occupied territories in Ukraine announced votes on joining Russia would be held. That mobilization, the first since World War II, is aimed at those with previous military experience and begins right now. 30,000 reservists will also be called up to reinforce the Russian military in Ukraine. Mr. Putin said he would support independence in areas of eastern Ukraine currently controlled by Russia-backed separatists.
Women in Iran set their headscarves on fire in fury. They are tired of the morality police beating them up and the Islamic Republic leaders who police their every move. Their protest is sparked by the death of this woman. Her name is Mahsa Amini and she was just 22. She was arrested by the morality police in Tehran earlier this month. They said she wasn't wearing the mandatory hijab or headscarf properly. The security forces have released this CCTV footage of Mahsa in detention. It's heavily edited. Suddenly, Mahsa collapses. The authorities say she had a heart condition, but eyewitnesses say she was beaten up in the police van.
Tigrayan authorities say Eritrea has launched a full-scale offensive along the country's border with northern Ethiopia in what appears to be an escalation of last month's renewal of fighting. The Eritreans are fighting alongside Ethiopian federal forces, including commando units as well as allied militia, Tigray spokesperson Getachew Reda said Tuesday. The U.S. envoy to the Horn of Africa told reporters Tuesday that Washington has been tracking Eritrean troops' movement across the border, and Mike Hammer condemned the movement of the Eritrean soldiers in northern Ethiopia.
My name is Mark Ferrix. Today is 28 November 2021.
A proof-of-life video published nearly 2 years into his captivity showed Mark Frericks in Afghanistan. The former U.S. naval officer and civilian engineer had been kidnapped by the Taliban in January 2020 and reportedly held by the Haqqani network. Now he's free.
His return is the culmination of many, many months of tireless and effective work by so many colleagues in our government.
The Taliban released Frericks in exchange for Haji Bashir Noorzai, an Afghan tribal leader who had been serving a life sentence in the U.S. for opium smuggling. Noorzai was granted clemency and received a hero's welcome at the Kabul airport.
Hurricane Fiona has left Caribbean islanders stunned after 200-kilometer-an-hour winds wreaked catastrophic damage on their communities. The storm hit Grand Turk Island on Tuesday morning before ripping into the rest of the Turks and Caicos, triggering power outages on 5 of the islands. A few days before that, it did even more damage in Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. Residents had little time to prepare. The massive storm has left more than 10,000 people displaced in the Dominican Republic. Around 400,000 others are without electricity, and more than 1 million have no drinkable water.
In some other countries, it's rare to see police and prison officials protesting. They are considered an essential service. But unions in South Africa say they want to pressure the government into addressing the rising cost of living. Workers have rejected a 3% wage increase, saying it's not enough to help them cope higher food and fuel prices. South Africa's crippling power cuts are also fueling public frustration. Electricity can go off for hours a day here, reducing business productivity, which could lead to job losses.